of Sports Shorts. And today we're going to do something a little differently than we have in the past. We're going to talk with two of our committee co-chairs, which is from the Next Gen Committee. So today we have Lee Hawley and Brandon Worrell, who are our co-chairs of the Next Gen Committee. For those of you that aren't aware, the Next Gen Committee was created about 3 years ago because the board of the SLA decided that we needed to hear from our members, more importantly, the younger members, new lawyers, law students, and to help us sort of expand our reach. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Lee and Brandon to the show. You can say hello. It's okay.
I'm like, hi, Bobby.
Hi, Bobby.
So, I've given a big, sort of a brief 30,000-foot view of what the Next Gen Committee is, but I'd like each of you to take a turn and talk a little bit about, how you see it, what it's doing. And before we get into that, starting with you, Lee, talk about what your practice is these days.
Yeah, so I work at Leopoldus Law, and I am of counsel of sports business and entertainment there. Right now, I have actually a lot of skateboarding clients, which is fun because there's different facets of skateboarding, name, image, and likeness use, and what they call a pro board, which is like you'll see an athlete's name on a deck, all the way to skateboard manufacturing and distribution. One of my newest clients is actually an energy drink provider that is co-owned by skaters. It's going to be launching really soon. So it's fun stuff. A lot of business law and transactional practice.
Great. And Brandon?
Yeah, so I am a contracts attorney at Honeywell Aerospace, based in Phoenix, and my predominant um, duties is transactional work, managing our commercial aerospace clients such as Boeing, Airbus, of the like. So basically, managing the contract cycle from start to finish, and really getting in the weeds of risk mitigation and ensuring that all of our contracts are thoroughly vetted and um, are in place. So I've been with Honeywell for about 2 years now, and that was after I worked at a firm for about a year or so doing insurance defense litigation. So transition from the litigation space to transactional work.
Which is an interesting thing that we often talk about on this show, which is how the training from being a litigator is really beneficial to moving into transactional practice because you've already learned how things went wrong, and maybe had the language in a contract been better, it might not have gone so wrong. So I think for
Exactly.
the law students out there, it's something, no matter how much you want to be working in media or for a team, sometimes a little litigation training is really beneficial. So let's jump right into the Next Gen. And Lee's been on Next Gen since we first launched it. And Brandon, this is your first run as a co-chair of the committee. And I'd like you, Lee, why don't you start and sort of talk about the things that Next Gen has done and what you're looking to do down the road.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate to have a diverse group of individuals that comes to the table with these innovative ideas to get our membership engaged, spanning from law students to senior attorneys. One of our main things that we came out with was Mentorship Monday, and it's on the third Monday of the month. And we have topics that we go through, such as resume review, LinkedIn workshop, SLA student writing competition workshop. We'll do how to network before conference, how to network after conference, how to network during the holidays. So covering a lot of topics that I think people generally want the answers to, but they don't know how to conduct an informational interview to get those answers. So it's bridging some of the gap that we've been able to identify.
Great. Brandon, anything to add?
Yeah, we have a so this is my third year being on the Next Gen Committee, and one of the great things about what the committee offers is kind of a track to really grow within the Sports Lawyers Association. So I started as a committee member and have now worked my way up to being a co-chair alongside Lee, and it just really goes to show the value that this committee and organization really puts an emphasis on with regards to its members. So there's a lot of opportunities that we give our members to really have the autonomy to go out, reach out to prospective speakers for Mentorship Monday, really engage the sports law community when it comes to, liaison outreach. Um, Also, just engaging the community with our various social media, um, you know, items that we'll have on our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages um, for specific events or months. So I think it really is a valuable committee to not only me but to our members, and we've done a really good job in growing what we can provide the SLA over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good note. Um, and Brandon, you just referenced the social media outreach, which was something that during my tenure as president I thought was important because we were using very traditional, conventional, old folk means of using email and not a whole lot else. Although we did have a LinkedIn and a Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's important that you reach out to people how they're going to communicate generally. And with respect to that, can you guys talk a little bit about sort of the emphasis you've put on the social media outreach part of what NextGen is doing?
Yeah, some of our content has been very innovative, and the way that we've bridged some of the gap is identifying campaigns and really tapping into the membership that we have within the SLA and asking our attorneys and saying, hey, would you like to be featured as a YMA member Wednesday? Or during Women's History Month, we had a Women's History Takeover where we had women attorneys taking over the Instagram. We also did Hispanic Heritage Month, where we had counsel from across the nation, and they spoke about how important it is to be a Hispanic or Latin lawyer within the sports industry. And so I think it's giving us the opportunity to showcase the diverse membership that we have and some of the benefits that you can achieve from being a member of the SLA, as well as offerings that maybe people miss in emails, right? We send emails, but you're busy. And so consuming the list can be hard sometimes. And so now we use social media to get the message out there. And it seems like members are more likely to sign up or remember because it's one image, it's right there in their face, and they're able to engage immediately.
Yeah, I think that's sort of what the goal was of utilizing NextGen in particular to advance our social media presence. Brandon, for you, since you've at least been around a bit longer than you, um, how did you? Just curious, how did you first come to find the SLA?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first interaction with SLA is when they hosted the conference here in Phoenix. I was a 1L at ASU Law, and through networking at the law school and the opportunities afforded to students locally to potentially help and volunteer at the conference, I was given that opportunity to be part of the registration team with Melissa and Lee and a couple other SLA folks to handle just the various tasks that was needed at the conference back in, I think it was 2019. And so from there, continuing to network and get a better understanding of what SLA has to offer, in addition to all the programming and offsite events that our members put on, outreach committees and whatnot. I continue to stay engaged and really continue that networking to get an idea and a sense of what SLA can offer me. And so I found it to be a great value to continue to remain committed to the SLA and become a member. And I've seen what value it's put into my career as I've now been a part of this committee for the last couple of years since I've graduated law school, and I've seen what it's done and for others to give back to those law students who were in my similar position when I was first starting out.
And Lee, if you could weigh in a little bit on, we were talking about this committee, but there might be people out there that say, well, I'm a young lawyer, I'm a law student, I'd like to get involved. How does somebody in that group, the criteria that we have for membership in NextGen, how do they get involved, and how do they get to be on the committee?
Yeah, that's a great question, especially because we always have so many applicants, and it's really hard because you don't want to say no. We want to say yes to everybody. Um, and really, the application process is very simple. It comes out or October 1st every year. Um, and there's questions. You have to be within 5 years of graduating from your law school. So with your JD, which means if you're coming in as a 1L, you have like an 8 year eligibility period, right? Or if you're coming in as a third year attorney, then you may only have a 2 year eligibility period. And we have guided questions because the Next Gen Committee is broken down into 4 working groups. We have our Mentorship Monday, our Next Gen Influencers, the Law School Liaisons, and our blog writers. And so through those 4 groups, we're looking for candidates to fill each of those groups. And while everybody wants to work with law schools, it sometimes helps if you're more interested being a blog writer because it gives you a little leg up if there's less people that want to be blog writers. Um, and so one of the benefits I think that we did this year, which was really nice, is those that had very meaningful and thoughtful applications were contacted directly after our next gen selections, and we said, hey, we still want you to be involved. Even though you're not on the committee, we still want you to write a blog. We still want you to participate in Mentorship Monday. You had such great ideas. How about you join our social media task force? Or let's get you working with the content committee on your idea to see this all the way through. Because we like the innovation that's coming out from our applicants, and we don't want to stifle that imagination, and we want to encourage them to be involved. So this year we've definitely reached out to a lot more people to continue the engagement, and the Next Gen Committee members are there to guide and support our members.
Good. Well, one of the programs that you've discussed is Mentorship Monday. And I'd like to dive into that a little bit. And Brandon, perhaps you can sort of talk to us about it a bit. Because the whole concept is that people generally think that mentorship is an organic process. You meet somebody, you work with somebody, and that relationship sort of is created and you have a mentor. But I think what NextGen has done is rather unique in the Mentorship Monday program because it seems to be more about providing access to experienced lawyers where a true mentorship may arise. So, Brandon, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how that program works and any of the successes that you can tell us about?
Yeah, I think Mentorship Monday is one of our most proud, innovative experiences that we've put on as part of the Next Gen Committee. It originally started as just a once a quarter type meeting that we would put on for our members, but it has since grown to a monthly, mentorship event, which is really exciting because we can offer a lot more differing experiences, whether it's, as Lee mentioned, a resume review or how to just simply network before a conference. So I think that's been probably our most one of the most successful items that we've put across as part of our committee. In terms of the way we put it on, I speaking to what you said about experienced attorneys, I think the great thing about Mentorship Monday is it doesn't just lend itself to an attorney that has 20 years of experience. We get attorneys from all different backgrounds, ranging from a couple years out of law school to 20 to 30 years out of law school. Could be folks on a sports team, but also in-house counsel for a business that may have sports related content as part of their job. So we try to offer a wide range of experience, but also knowledge that our members can take away from. And I think that's proved the most valuable to our members to have those options available to them in the event that they can't make it out to each quarterly event. Now we've made it a monthly event with various different topics. Another great thing is just the wealth of topics that we're offering, whether it's even just better updating your LinkedIn profile. What makes you more of a captive candidate when it comes to applying for a job using your LinkedIn as a resource. So it's things like that where we're trying to be a little bit more innovative in the process, where it's not just how do you go about walking up to someone and giving an elevator pitch. It's taking your entire background and profile, whether that's social media, email, in person, and trying to bridge those gaps to make you a better candidate overall for a future job. And that's, not only for current law students, but also, young lawyers or experienced lawyers who are looking to make that jump or transition into a different job. So that's what we're trying to emphasize, is that it's not a one fit meets all type of thing. It's for everyone, and we want to encourage, all members of the SLA to, take advantage of these resources, because we do think it's valuable for any person in their, time of their career to engage in stuff, because I think mentorship and networking is, a necessity in this day and age to try to really stand out, to make that next move.
Well, I think that's really a great benefit of the organization and what's being offered to young attorneys. And for the record, there are some of us. You said lawyers with 20 or 30 years experience. There's some of us with more than 40 years of experience.
I don't
So
want to
we,
call you out, Bobby.
well, don't, because I will kick your ass if you do. Um, no, I think what I really want to also talk about a little bit here is your both of your perspective on engagement within the SLA, which is to say, the experience of young lawyers getting to meet experienced lawyers, whether it's at our conferences or through the programs you put on, and just talk a little bit about that value proposition that the organization brings. And, I've always been a big fan of saying our organization uh, has a more engaged membership, such that at a conference you can walk up to anybody and talk and they're available. But I'm just curious to know what both of your perspectives are on the nature of our organization and the accessibility to its membership. Lee, you want to jump in first?
Sure. So I think Brendan and I both have very unique perspectives because we both started out as law student volunteers at conference. And working through that process, right? Even just registration, you can put a face to the name. You always see a headshot online, but when you see someone in person, it's more real. You're like, oh, that's what they look like in real life. They're not just this little circle that I've found on Google, right? And so I think that from coming in as a law student or a law student volunteer, you definitely have the accessibility to where you can brush the dust off a little bit and get used to being around attorneys and sports lawyers and learning how to communicate, because it's not the same as if you go network at like your local county bar association. The vibe and energy is very different. And so where at a bar association, you may be able to just like walk up and interrupt a conversation, with the SLA, yes, you can introduce yourself, but sometimes there may be two attorneys that are actually talking business to each other. And so you have to be a little bit mindful of that, because we only see each other once a year and we're all really busy. At the same time, may need something from that attorney that we see because we're working on a deal and we're like, hey, while you're here, I need to pull you aside so we can work on something. So I think it's you're learning how to network within the sports industry, which is very unique and different than if you go to like your state bar, your local county bar, or any of like the affinity or diverse specific groups. It's a little nuanced. And so then once you become an attorney, it's easier because people will say, well, where do you work? Right? Instead of, oh, you're a law student. What do you want to do? And so the conversation shifts a little bit as well, because then it's not this law student is looking for an internship. It's this person works somewhere and we can find a common ground to have a discussion. So when I was in law school, I always had a point to talk about. Like if I knew I was going to talk to somebody from the NCAA, I had something that I wanted to speak of that was legal. Not, what are your thoughts on NIL, right? But maybe a little more innovative than that. Like, hey, this conference realignment and the way that it's shifting, and how is that going to affect a bankruptcy proceeding, right? Like, I don't practice bankruptcy law. Do we think about how that can impact the colleges and what that looks like? And so I think having those points of conversation that are a little more thought out is what really helps make the conversation so approachable.
So we're really talking about nuance, and it's just having an approach, which I think is really interesting because you mentioned it earlier that you guys, one of the programs that you do is in advance of the conference on how to reach out and meet with people at the conference. Because I think both of you, as certainly I can, talk about the experiences you've had in meeting people that were either an aha moment or something that was really beneficial to the development of your career. So if any anecdotes you want to share would be great, because I think part of the value is you can talk about, oh, it's great and you meet people and blah blah blah, but when people actually understand, and I'm not saying that the SLA is a job interview speed dating enterprise, rather it's an opportunity to meet people and, more importantly, to see the breadth and wealth of opportunities within the sports industry. So, any can you recall any event or events at a conference you were at, for example, or through an outreach event that you think enhanced your practice or your end goals of getting into the sports world?
Do you want to
Brandon, you
start,
want to
Lee?
go first?
Either one of you, jump in.
I mean, for me, it goes back to, day one of when I was a law student and I was a law student volunteer at my first conference. And I was a little, wide eyed to, the amount of people that were there and who I could actually interact with. And it amazed me the amount of opportunity that I could have to reach not only just folks on sports teams or, collectively in the sports space, but just, the wide variety of, backgrounds and individuals. And I think, as you mentioned before, it's not so much a job interview, but I think you do have to have that mindset when you're in this space to kind of be on your game of, this, you want to be presentable, you want to, look the part. And because you never know when an opportunity may arise. And at, if there is an event where, a job opportunity does come up and they remember you by having like a decent conversation and you weren't, being off-putting, they'll remember you, and the fact that you maybe took initiative to have those conversations. And so I remember networking with a couple folks that I had pinned down as I was registering them for that conference, and making those um, networks and introductions happen. I was able to continue to have those discussions with them offline after the conference, and I still have those contacts to this day. And so those are the you know individuals that I really rely on, if there were to become an opportunity to tap into that space or industry that they're involved in, to really back me up, knowing who I am, and vouch for me in a potential interview setting.
Lee?
Yeah, I have a couple great stories. I mean, I think I've been within the SLA for so long that I have like really great stories. um, but when I was in law school, I wrote a article about the concussion litigation, specifically about class actions, and whether the class should or should not be certified. And is very specific, and it's civil procedure, and most people hate it. And it was so much fun for me. And so I wrote this article, and I remember I had like my second or third draft done, and I was discussing it with Greg Clifton, and we're having this conversation. And I said, well, I'm trying to figure out, what their argument is, or some position that wasn't really clear. And Greg goes, just call the attorney. And I'm like, what? He's like, just call the attorney. Their information is public. It's on the pleading. Like, just call them, send them your article, and see what happens. And it was very frightening, like as a law student, to think of it that way. But in your practice every day, right? When people don't respond to you, I have a client that's owed like 50 grand right now, and the people that owe him money are not answering. So I went and found their trademark and emailed their trademark attorney, right? Public record. Like, you can find these things. And this is something that is actual in practice that you use. And I was in law school and just writing a paper, and Greg taught me a skill that I now use as an attorney. So I think that there are things, if you pay attention to them, you can definitely pick them up, um, and like learn how that helps you in the future. Even when I was working at the USOPC in audit and compliance, and we would go through some of the bylaws, because I had that network with the SLA. Some of the attorneys, like if something got pushed back to them because of the verbiage from our compliance coordinator, they'd just pick up the phone and call me. Hey, Lee, I don't understand what the problem is with this clause. This is the way that we're reading it, right? And I'd say, totally understand. This is what we're looking for. Here is maybe a way that it could be reworded where it's still serving the purpose of your organization, but it's meeting what we need on the compliance side. And they're like, oh, okay, that's easy. That's great, right? Hang up, done. Everybody goes on about their way. So it's kind of twofold. You can learn some of those small skills that you miss in law school that they don't teach you. And the network also can help business easier in the future.
Well, I think you've pointed out one of the more important things, not just with the SLA, but I think generally for enhancing one's practice. And that is, given the fact that we're all trained to do the research and go through the cases and the statutes and read articles and whatnot to help us find an answer, probably the greatest resource we have, and one which the SLA excels in, is relationships. And the ability to reach out to the membership and, oh, I'm an SLA member and I have this question. It cuts through the Gordian knot more times than not. And I think that's an important lesson that Next Gen has been teaching now for, in its third year, which is utilize people. People are a resource. No lawyer is an island, to paraphrase a great line. And I think it's important that what Next Gen is doing is reaching out to law students and younger lawyers. And for the record, all experienced lawyers know exactly who the law students are at the conference because they're the only ones wearing suit and ties. But we're there, and for those of you that are law students or young lawyers watching this, I can't recommend it highly enough, and I'm sure my two guests here will jump in on this bandwagon. But coming to our annual conference is no better way to find out about and get involved in and learn about the sports industry than taking the time to come to our annual conference, which will be in Baltimore this year. And I think that's a really important asset that the organization provides, which is people. And oftentimes, the process of law school in particular is a closed set, as it were. And you lose sight of the fact that it's not all about the class experience. Yes, it's part of how you're trained, but I think what we offer at SLA, and I think what Next Gen has done, is to expand that universe and to realize that there's more than just the books, as it were. So, thank you both for taking the time to key in a little bit on Next Gen. And are there any things that you'd like to add before we close out about Next Gen, or opportunities or things that you really want to promote, as it were?
Sign up for Mentorship Monday. Make sure your law school knows about us, because we have law school liaisons that will connect with your law school and help you plan events. If you need attorneys to do a CLE, to come volunteer and speak, we can help with that asset. And
how do they reach you? How do they get to you to do this?
Well, they can use social media. That's one platform. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We have accounts. You can message us on there. Or you can reach out to Brandon and I directly. We have the various people in our committee that have already reached out to the law schools. So ask your dean, because your dean has heard from us.
And we should both be on the membership directory. And I think that's an important tool that a lot of members forget about. Is our directory is very valuable and a huge asset for our members to really connect with those folks that are members of the SLA. And one important note too, to add on top of what Lee was saying is, get involved, reach out to us if you want to, write a blog and, get involved with our social media task force. There's always so much going on within the SLA and the Next Gen committee that we can always use, additional help and individuals that are really yearning to get involved and put their name out there. So definitely reach out to us and hopefully we can help you out as well.
And our website is sportslaw.org, where you can go and find a lot of this information we're talking about. But more importantly, it's time to renew your membership if you haven't already done it. We're on an annual membership basis. All memberships expire on December 31st. So if you haven't renewed yet, you have a little window, but I think it's by the end of February. If you haven't renewed, I hate to say it, but you will be cut off. So make sure to go to sportslaw.org, renew your membership, or become a member of the Sports Lawyers Association and have the sort of opportunities and the access that we've been talking about today. So I guess my closing comments are thanking you both for taking the time out of your busy days to spend some time and be part of this program. We'll see you both in Baltimore in May. And you may see either of these people at outreach events, whether they're here in Southern California or Arizona. And please, if you're a law student in particular and you haven't heard anything about our organization, reach out. We have members pretty much across the country and throughout the world and are available to come speak at your law school, at your sports and entertainment law societies. And it's easy to do, no charge. We're happy to do it. And I'd like to thank both of you, not just for your membership in the SLA, but for taking a leadership role with the Next Gen Committee. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bobby.
Bobby.